This was really interesting article that came out from Business Journals Ben Fischer. He had an interesting piece regarding the United Football League. He talks to Fox Sports CEO Eric Shanks and RedBird Capital founder and managing partner Gerry Cardinale about how they came together to form the UFL. The article goes into lots of detail. So first, the genesis of the United Football League. The decision was made during a dinner between Fox Sports CEO Eric Shanks and RedBird Capital Partners founder. And that dinner would become transformational decision in the landscape of the American Football League ethos, because so basically it says by last July, a merged league was so clearly the right move that Cardinale and Shanks agreed to a deal over a single red wine infused dinner just days after the USFL championship game. So that is very interesting that they basically agreed to do this. So they were already talking before the USFL championship. They were probably talking even before that. We kind of thought maybe it was after the season during the summer, but no, these guys started talking after the USFL championship. They agreed days after the USFL championship. They agreed in July to merge the league, and that was kept under wraps for quite some time. The path to merger was kind of interesting. They discussed bidding together, so RedBird discussed bidding together. Fox and RedBird discussed bidding together to buy Vince McMahon's XFL out of bankruptcy, but RedBird decided to did the deal for about $15 million with Dwayne Johnson and Danny Garcia. Then Fox kind of pursued its own strategy, buying the property of the old USFL and rushing it to market to beat the XFL by playing its first game on April 22nd. The XFL launched later that year. So they decided initially they considered doing it together to buy the XFL, but then they kind of went their own paths for whatever reason. They took different routes, but it was very quickly became clear that they were going to work together. What's interesting is that so they already had a relationship before the acquisition of, clearly they were talking, they know each other. So it was very easy for them to then later on merge together because they've already built that. And that ecos, that level sphere of network and executives is very small. So clearly they all know each other. On the United front, it's not against the XFL versus USFL. They were talking about something different. The merger symbolizes a strategy against a common competitor, which is the overcrowded second quarter of sports and entertainment schedules. Shanks said, everybody has to understand that our competition wasn't between the USFL and XFL when we merged. Our competition is everything else in the second quarter. Thought that was a very interesting thing. Also, I want to point out that the sports merger between ESPN, Fox, and Warner Brothers Discovery about having their own platform for streaming sports, which is supposed to come next year, they did that because they have to go against the Netflix and the Amazon. So it's interesting now that once we were enemies and now we need to be partners because the new common enemy is, Netflix, Apple, and Amazon. And so they're trying to stay, relevant in the cable world. So now they're merging together. I think having the UFL as a property, I think the fact that they're merging together bodes well even more so for the United Football League, because that's a property that makes a lot of sense for them, that they don't have to pay these outrageous fees for, the MLSs of the world or, even 5 or 6, tier sports things, that they own it. So they can make money off of it as well as broadcast it, and it fills slots for them as well. This is going to be a very interesting season. They said on the merger cornerstone principles, Shanks elaborated on synergies between Fox and RedBird. They love that word, but basically they could pull services from each other. So we're actually providing services to the league. So the league itself is more profitable until it stands on its own 2 feet. If it ever does, Shanks said, you may always get market help from Fox. You may always get sponsorship help from RedBird. That might be the right model going forward. We're starting on second and third base with this thing because the infrastructure RedBird and Fox have and the media expertise from ESPN and Fox. So that, again, we talk about this all the time. You can't get any better than these guys. Aside from like Netflix or Amazon just creating their own football league, which just for streaming, I don't think they would do that. This is kind of your best shot. Now, Gerry Cardinale comments on the league's financial health, which underscores the confidence that it is self-sufficient. And Cardinale said that the league is very self-sufficient from a capital standpoint and would not, on its face, need more strategic involvement from potential new investors. That is a good sign. We've heard them talking about having potential investors. I think now that they've merged together, he's basically saying from a capital standpoint, we don't need to do that. But it may be open for local investors, a la MLS style owner operator arrangement, something that he has always talked about with the XFL. Now, I want to drop this in. So we've heard from our sources that teams like the St. Louis Battlehawk and DC Defenders could fetch a couple $100 million. Those are what those franchises are worth at this point. That's if the league has a good first and second season. I think we're definitely in for one. Clearly, we're in for one, and we're going to have a second season. Mike Mitchell agrees too. After that is going to be kind of murky. Now, while other markets could be running in the 50 to 75 million. That's what I've been hearing from my sources, that's what the teams are valued at right now. Of course, this depends on how the league does, of course, in the next couple of years. We've also heard for some time that Memphis Showboats could be owned by FedEx founder Fred Smith, who was influential in bringing the team to the USFL. Now, Cardinale for a long time wanted to model the XFL, now UFL, like Major League Soccer, and believes that league, the UFL, could be bigger than Major League Soccer. They've already had in 2019, David Tepper acquired the Charlotte MLS franchise for approximately $350 million. To give you an idea, he's thinking that the St. Louis Battlehawks, potential DC Defenders, could fetch in that range. That's kind of 200, 300, 400 million dollar range. Those the top tier franchises of the league, where the other ones are a lower, be lower on that 50 to 75 million. But if you're like a Fred Smith and you drop 50 million on the Memphis Showboats, and this league is successful, in 5 years that 50 million could be worth 200 or 300 million. If you think about how the valuation of all these franchises keep going up, and especially now that the trends has changed. Now in 20 years, are these going to continue to go up in price? I don't know. Kids are not really watching sports. There's a whole other thing. But as of right now, so this is what RedBird Capital and Fox are in. Fox is in it for the content for their channel. They're not selling where, you see, you've heard Disney kind of maybe selling off bits and pieces. Fox is in the game, and they know over-the-air broadcast is going to be huge for this league. And I think they're really just banking on just having that on Fox and ABC to really generate interest in the league, not doing all this kind of schmoozy marketing stuff in the beginning. There's, because of the staff being kind of small at this point. So the emphasis on corroboration between Fox and Disney, the pursuit of sustainability is well thought, established USFL as a significant player in American sports. It'll be a major test to see if these two entities can make it work. Another thing I wanted to point out in this, where did I put that? I talked about the streaming services, that they were never going to compete. That's basically it. I thought there was some other piece in here that I wanted to kind of touch on. But that's kind of where you have it with the league. It was a very interesting article by Ben Fischer. I could interview those guys, but clearly they would never talk to me. But it was a very insight into the formation of the United Football League and the birth of the United Football League over some glasses of wine, and two guys that have already were talking about partnering back a couple years ago. Finally deciding, okay, now is the time to pull the trigger and let's join forces. And now we get to see it all to fruition in just a couple days on March 30th.